Welcome to a new editing challenge. Phil here with Photography and Friends. Today I'm editing this photo from Joris Grassis. Thank you so much for posting your photo to wesaturate.com. And if you want to follow along, make sure you click on the link below to the Photography and Friends website where you can download the raw photo. You can also participate by posting your own edit to the community, and you get access to that community by being a member of one of our courses. So let's get straight into it. This one's actually a pretty basic edit, I think anyways, from looking at this initially. As always, this is the first time I'm seeing this photo, and you're along on this journey with me. So the cool thing about this photo is it's a long exposure, but you've got this subject here in the middle. Part of me is like, I wish that guy wasn't there. Can I Photoshop him out of there? But we are going to use this subject and maybe try to sharpen up some of the edges, because since it was a long exposure, any sort of motion, any little movement here and there is going to make that edge look a little blurry. So let's crop this photo. I think this wide sort of panoramic view of the sunset is nice. So let's do like a 16:9 and see what that looks like. I don't want to crop out his feet. Cropping out feet never looks that great, but maybe like doing like a cowboy cut where it's like from the knees up can look good. But I think just leaving it so his feet are in there looks pretty good. Maybe even cropping in just a little bit to keep him centered. Or if we wanted to, we can try to put him on one of the thirds line. There is something about him being centered that does feel awkward to me. So actually, let's just go with a completely custom aspect ratio. I usually don't do that. I'm going to unlock my aspect ratio right there. Because I like to stick to sort of the standard aspect ratios that are out there used on different screens and devices. But I'm really trying to figure out how can we get this person on one of those thirds lines but still have a nice panoramic. And maybe it's doing more of like a creative crop like that. That's looking pretty good. I like something like that. He doesn't have to be, or she doesn't necessarily have to be exactly on that intersection. Something like that looks pretty good, and it's not getting too rid of too much of this photo. Over here, it's a little bit blown out. There's not much color, so something like that actually looks a little bit better, more balanced to me. With the subject right in the middle, it was more of a distraction than anything. Overall exposure, we've got a range of exposures. We might want to just increase the contrast. This is one where I might just jump to our tone curve and add a little bit of an S curve to increase that contrast. I might bump up my shadow slider up here just a little bit to bring back a little bit of information in those shadows, but I'm not trying to like expose this person, their back. I actually like that they are somewhat silhouetted, and I might bring down my whites just to get even more information back from the sky, maybe even here. We can also take our white point up here in the tone curve and bring that down. See, it doesn't do much unless we bring this one down as well. But sometimes if you go too far, it starts to make the whites look like a gray, and that's not necessarily what I'm going for here. So we might actually just leave it something like that. Color-wise, long exposure, sunset, beautiful colors. Let's boost the vibrance of this and the saturation. So actually not vibrance, we're just going to boost the overall saturation even more. Maybe warm it up a little bit. I'm not adding maybe a scotch of magenta. I kind of like I kind of like, and then I kind of don't like that the right side of the frame looks like there's all this color, and then the left side is this blue. I'm actually going to use a graduated filter to fix that, try to balance it out even more, because right now it looks like I added a graduated filter to the right side of this photo, which I obviously didn't. Split toning might be a cool thing to add at the end. There is quite a bit of noise in this, and because it's a long exposure, I think adding quite a bit of noise reduction is not a bad idea because it kind of blends things together, makes it even more smooth, sort of watercolor-like, and so increasing that noise reduction is actually not a bad thing in this case. Lens corrections. Let's see what that does. I have it on. If you enable lens corrections and then you open up another photo and edit, it will automatically apply those profile corrections. And so this time I don't really care. It doesn't really change the photo that much for me. All right, that's looking pretty good. Let's go straight into our graduated filter. Gonna click and drag to the right. And so this is actually selecting everything on the left-hand side, as you can see, highlighted in red. Turn off that mask overlay with that button or pressing the O on your keyboard. I'm gonna just bring down our exposure, try to match these colors and everything on the right-hand side. Increase our magenta, warm it up a bit. Actually, interesting. So let's just reset that. The colors over here are some blues in the water. So we might want to edit the water and the sky separately. Let's see if we add blue actually. So say we add blue here, make it add a little bit more magenta. Then down here in the colors, let's add a little bit of red or orange. That's starting to match in terms of color tones. See this color over here in the water and this one. It's a little bit bright still. So let's take down our shadows. And when you affect the exposure, the colors sometimes start to be affected as well. So I'm going to actually bring back down our magenta. Add a little bit more blue even. All right, so that's looking pretty good. So let's click done. Let's see the before and after with the backslash button, before, after. See how that is sort of like a better fade over to the left-hand side. Say we want to add a little bit more orange to the water to match this. We can do that a number of ways. We could literally just do that with a brush adjustment. So let's just do that quickly. I'm just going to brush over our water here. You can see that my selection is that area. You might want to be a little bit more careful with this. I'm going to brush off our subject. And let's go ahead and just add a little bit of warmth. And if we add some warmth, but then we want to apply it only to the highlights, what we can do is set a range mask to luminance and then adjust the range so it's only affecting the highlights. So this is definitely going to help. That yellow for the temperature isn't the right yellow necessarily. So let's take that off and add color this way. And you can see here, if we pick a color, more of a specific orange, it might match even more. So first we're trying to get the right color, and then we can play with the saturation overall too. So the saturation's all the way up. I think that orange is pretty close to what we're looking for. Let's boost the saturation, the overall saturation of this adjustment here. Let's play a little bit with this range mask, maybe a little bit more of a selection. That's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit of dehaze. Nah, no dehaze. Dehaze is gonna sharpen everything. Maybe a little bit more warmth up here. And magenta. Just trying to match those colors from left to right. That's looking pretty good. Now I can see a little bit of a sort of edge over here next to our subject. So I'm going to go in and add a little bit. And this time I might add auto mask so that Lightroom, whoops, not erase. I don't want erase. Click A for your brushes. which is going to add to the selection, whereas erase is going to remove. And with the auto mask on, it kind of helps with that edge. Same if we're here erasing with auto mask on, it's going to do the same. All right. So that looks pretty good. We can see the before and after again. And I think that, again, makes it look even better. All right, let's see what we can do with our subject right here. Let's take a new brush. We're going to paint over our subject. Let's press O so we can see what our selection is. And you can see it does a decent job selecting our subject with auto mask on. Let's go ahead and try to erase the edges. This is something that probably would be better done in Photoshop. It definitely would be easier. Let's erase the water down here. The edges. That's pretty close. You know, you could play around with this stuff and get pretty fine-tuned with it, but let's leave it at that. A range mask for luminance might help, but what I'm actually going to do is let's increase the sharpness, and maybe I do want to silhouette this entire subject. So if let's just crank up the contrast, because if I bring down the exposure, it's going to affect, see what is selected up here, which with our eraser, we might be able to erase and get. So that looks pretty good. All right, so we don't want like this black shadow. That doesn't look natural, but let's increase our contrast, our sharpness, and clarity. Just using all these sliders to kind of fix those edges as much as possible. We can turn this on and off. It's kind of subtle. Not sure if it was worth it. But again, I'm just playing around, editing this as if I was doing it for myself for fun. And I think that's looking pretty good. Trying to think, maybe let's just play around with split toning, see if adding some different color to the highlights versus the shadows can be interesting. For this kind of sunset photo, what I would add is some orange or yellow to the highlights. And then for the shadows down here, some sort of blue, kind of matching the color of the ocean like that, but then decreasing the saturation of both. I find when the saturation of the split toning is up too high, it can really quickly start to look unnatural, and I don't even know if I want that. I don't think I do, so I'm going to turn that off. It wasn't really doing much anyways. That's looking pretty good. I kind of want to just go back to our crop here. Crop in just a little bit more. I'm wondering if it's like a 16 by 9 aspect is basically what I had it as. Maybe let's try a square, go in for social media or something. Nah, that's not what I want. Just seeing, maybe I want more of the sky right here, like so. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think I like the wide version better. Awesome. I think I'm going to leave it at that. This is a pretty quick one for me. This is one of those photos. There's not much you can actually do with it unless you're doing some kind of photo compositing, something completely different. Let me just add a little dehaze. That actually brings out some more color and detail, and then bring up our overall exposure just a little bit, just a tiny bit. All right. Tweaking things. Anyways, that's my edit. I can't wait to see yours. So make sure you post it to the group. As always, have a beautiful day, and we'll see you in another challenge next month.